Have you been enjoying our Impact Podcasts and our great guests? Then please give us a thumbs up and leave a 5-star review on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you consume your favorite podcasts. This edition of the Impact Podcast is brought to you by ERI. ERI has a mission to protect people, the planet, and your privacy, and is the largest fully integrated IT and electronics asset disposition provider and cybersecurity-focused hardware destruction company in the United States, and maybe even the world. For more information on how ERI can help your business properly dispose of outdated electronic hardware devices, please visit eridirect.com. This episode of the Impact Podcast is brought to you by Closed Loop Partners. Closed Loop Partners is a leading circular economy investor in the United States with an extensive network of Fortune 500 corporate investors, family offices, institutional investors, industry experts, and impact partners. Closed Loop's platform spans the arc of capital from venture capital to private equity, bridging gaps and fostering synergies to scale the circular economy. To find Closed Loop Partners, please go to www.closedlooppartners.com. Welcome to another edition of the Impact Podcast. I'm John Shigeri, and I'm so excited to have with us today Lisa Sun. She's the CEO of GRAVITAS. Welcome to the Impact Podcast, Lisa.
John, thank you so much for having me. This is exciting.
I'm so excited to be here, and I've read all about you, and I'm so excited you agreed to come on the show today. I'm embarrassed to say that having just returned from a trip abroad, I have not read your new book, which has become a bestseller, GRAVITAS, but we're going to be talking about this book today. And I think the necessity for this book is so huge that I'm just honored you decided to come on the show. So thanks for being here.
Thanks, John. And I think the goal of this podcast episode should be that by the time you're done with the episode and your audience is, everyone's going to want to read the book cover to cover. So I'm totally fine that you haven't read it. In fact, I'm going to breadcrumb you throughout this episode, and you're going to be like, oh, I need to know what's happening in chapter 2. She just mentioned it, and I need to go read it now.
I used to pride myself, and I'm embarrassed to say this, but it's a God's honest truth, with having read every book of every author who came on the show. And I'm sorry to trip up now at this late stage of 17 years of doing this podcast. I don't like to trip up, but it's okay. I will read this book, and so will my family. So we'll get.
Plus, it's a very beautiful cover, right? So it's sustainable. So once you're done reading it, you can reuse the cover to cover whatever guilty pleasure reading you have on the plane. You can cover it with whatever mystery, spy novel, romance novel. It's a very sexy looking cover.
It is a sexy looking cover. I have to give you that. It is a sexy looking cover. And Lisa, before we get talking about the book, though, I want to learn a little bit about what makes you tick and how you even got here. Where did you grow up, and what was your upbringing like that made you take on such an important topic in this planet today?
Well, the 3 things I usually share about myself, the first is I'm the daughter of immigrants from Kaohsiung, Taiwan. My parents are college educated, came to the U.S. in 1974. I grew up in Fontana, California. Some of your listeners may know the Inland Empire. And my parents did not know anyone. So my mom worked on a hamburger truck. My dad worked on a loading dock. They ended up owning an all-you-can-eat Mongolian barbecue, $4.95 at lunch, $12.95 at dinner. And in 1987, there were no child labor laws. So I was the cashier at the age of 8. I can tell you firsthand the grip strength required to run that old carbon copy credit card machine, because if there was one number missing, my parents didn't get paid. But one of the things I love is I grew up in the company of visionaries. I think immigrants believe in things before they can see it. They know how to create something from nothing. And so that is a through line throughout my life, is being able to have that perseverance and that grit. So very lucky to have grown up working in the family restaurant. And then the second part of my story is I spent 11 years at McKinsey & Company, the management consulting firm. So thank goodness for these Asian genetics. Most people spend 18 months there. I spent 11 years climbing the corporate ladder. And I love that I learned client service, apprenticeship, mentorship. But, even in the prep for this, we were talking about the fact that for women in the 2000s, I was one of 13% of the partnership that were women globally, right? So it took me twice as long to get to the same markers of success as my male colleagues. And I think that really framed a lot of my insights around the systemic barriers women face. And then the third part of my story is in 2013, my mom convinced me to take my life savings and start my own company, GRAVITAS. And actually, she was a tiger mom before tiger moms were a thing. When Amy Chua's book came out, she was like, "You see someone write New York Times bestselling book all about me." And she convinced me to drain my life savings to start a company that our mission is we catalyze confidence. So I spent over a decade now as an entrepreneur myself. We make fashion products, we make content, media, but it's all designed to help women believe in themselves from the inside out. And I think the book has been a real milestone for us because a lot of men are reading it too. I always say confidence is a universal topic, whether you're a woman, a man, non-binary. And so that really has set the stage for what we think is the next phase of growth. But I grew up with entrepreneurs. I spent over a decade in corporate America, and the last decade I've come full circle being an entrepreneur myself.
I love that, and I love what your mom did, which is just such a tiger mom move. But I so agree with you, Lisa. Immigrants, and I'm an Armenian. I'm not an immigrant, so to speak. I'm third. I have the blessings to be a third generation. But immigrant DNA is immigrant DNA, no matter which generation you're in. And the resilience and, as you say, the grit that it takes to be an entrepreneur, I think immigrants are just, from a DNA perspective, but so well suited for that. So well suited for that.
Well, one of the highlights of my book is we talk about your life story is your leadership story. True. And so I love that you start with tell me something from your childhood, because I think it gives you great insight into all the markers of success that have defined your character. And it gives you great insight into who you're going to become. It's like that old movie, that Pixar movie, Inside Out, where your brain can only retain core memories, right? I can't remember what I had for lunch yesterday, but we can remember those moments that really framed who we've become and who we want to become.
And honestly, what a move by your parents, overtly and covertly, to put you at 12 in charge of the cash register. What's a more important role than the cash register at a restaurant? Probably nothing.
Well, John, I'm going to tell you, no one dines and dashes when your kid's the cashier. Okay. I think they just feel really bad for your parents. They're like, what family has to have their kid check you out? So, and I had skipped 2 grades. So I was a little bit more mature probably at that age. And, I started as the cashier at 8. And then when I was 12 years old, I was a freshman in high school, and I was working there after school and on weekends and throughout the summer. And I really think I became a fixture in my parents' restaurant because they were all, I think every person in this tiny town was rooting for me. I went to an Ivy League college on scholarship, right? Everyone was a part of the story, but literally no one dines and dashes if there's a kid on the cash register. And I think that was strategic on my parents' part.
Literally, if you had a woman friend, a writer from Hollywood, that's literally a Netflix show itself. That restaurant and what you learned and what you saw in that restaurant in your happy youth is itself a Netflix show that people would dig.
Well, we joked. You remember those old ABC Family afternoon specials, right? Those little, and there was that true story of an Asian girl who won the national spelling bee. It was called The Girl Who Could Spell Freedom. And yes. I was like, I could probably have started like the girl who could check you out of your dinner. I mean,
that is awesome. That's just awesome. I just think that's a great story. And it's a great backstory. Mom and dad are still in Fontana or in Southern California?
No. And I think this is most people who grew up in Kaohsiung, it's the southern part of Taiwan, they end up feeling really pulled by where they're from. A lot of people from Taipei or the north will stay in the US. My parents retired and decided to move back. So my brother and I still live in New York City now, but my parents are retired. They love it. Up until last week, my mom said, we had a woman president for 8 years. So she was, and her mayor of her town's a woman. I think she was like, you know what? When tsunamis happen, men make the speeches, women clean up the beaches. I want to live in a place that has a lady president.
Good for your mom and dad. That's awesome. That's awesome. So they're back living the dream. They did the American dream, and they're doing the Taiwan dream. They went back home and got to live their youth and their retirement years there. That's beautiful. Yeah. That's a great bookend to a life. I mean, what bookends to a life? That's wonderful. And you're in my favorite city on the planet, New York City. Which is also just a great place to be in the middle of all the action. So you went to McKinsey. What were you doing at McKinsey when you were there? Like, what was your call to action and your specialty at McKinsey, which is, again, one of the greatest consulting firms in this whole, world?
Well, I started there as a business analyst in September of 2000, and I just stayed. I went direct to associate and then was on the partner track. And my specialty was global fashion, luxury, and beauty. So I got to work with many of the CEOs of your favorite brands. I can't say who, but really incredible brands that touch everyone's lives, and lived around the world. So with the McKinsey model, a lot of my clients I was able to serve throughout Europe, Asia. My last couple of years, I lived in Latin America, in Peru and Colombia and Mexico. And so it was really one of those unique experiences where in your 20s and 30s, when else do you get to spend time with the world's leading executives and thinkers and solve tough problems in compressed timeframes and get a chance to see the world?
It's so true. So what was mom's impetus to say, Lisa, take your money out of the bank and start your own thing. Go do your own thing. Because any parent whose child works for McKinsey, that itself is almost the end game. It's really you're at probably one of the most elite, if not the most elite, consulting firm in the world.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, most people stay 18 months. Once you stay past a decade, you don't really leave. Most people end up retiring in their 50s when they've been at the firm. So once you get past a decade, maybe you stay 15 years, 16 years, 25 years, but very few people leave. I think it was the fact, and I always say you write the book you most need to read yourself, right? If I could get in the DeLorean Back to the Future style, I wish I'd had my book. There was a moment where I decided to take a year sabbatical. I had a paid sabbatical that I had earned. And over the course of the year, I realized that the ways in which I wanted to make a difference in the world, there had to be other ways to do it. And I had a number of mentors say, there's probably so much out there that you haven't explored, because I went to McKinsey straight out of college. It was my only place to work for over a decade. And that is also very rare. Most people go back to business school or law school and then decide if they want to go back. And so my mom, while I was taking this year off, we were at the dinner table and I had just finished reading Walter Isaacson's biography of Steve Jobs. And I remembered his Stanford commencement speech about connecting the dots of your life. And on a napkin, I had just drawn some dots of my life. And my mom said, napkin is not job. How much money you save? And when I told her how much money I had saved working in corporate America for over a decade, she said, oh, good, you bet on yourself. And I don't know if I fully appreciated that moment, other than, to your point, if you sacrifice to move to America, you put your kids in the best schools possible, do you really want them to live the risky entrepreneurial journey that you had taken? But I think my mom realized that there was something bigger that I wanted to do to make a difference in the world. And McKinsey, as many gifts as I got from McKinsey, it wasn't necessarily the natural home for me to execute the next phase of my life.
That's really interesting. So you took the money out, you started GRAVITAS.
Mm-hmm.
What was your initial business plan? What was the plan when you started, and how has that plan evolved?
Well, to be open with you, when you use your own money, you don't have to write a business plan, right? Usually you write a business plan because you're going to raise money or you need to get people on board. And
True.
So I will say to you that it was a Word document. It wasn't a real plan. But the inspiration, what was kind of on that napkin of dots of my life, was when I was 22 years old in my first annual review at McKinsey, my first boss told me I didn't have any gravitas. I didn't have any confidence. And she told me to buy a new dress, look in the mirror, and love myself, which I think is very offensive. I don't think you should tell a 23-year-old making $43,000 a year, size 18, 20, to buy new clothes. But what she really was saying is, she said, look, Dumbo does not need a feather to fly, but it reminded him that he could. So I can teach you how to be good at this job, but I can't teach you to wake up every morning and like yourself. She said, for me, my ritual is I put on a great dress. it reminds me I can fly. And so I always loved that idea. And I saw a gap in the marketplace around, first of all, size inclusion. We were inclusive before it was cool to be inclusive. I used to be a size 20. And so we're 0 to 26W from the day we launched, and we patented a bunch of products. So I thought, look, could we change the perceptions around fashion, which I had spent over a decade learning, along with this overall mission to catalyze confidence. So it was really, I saw a white space in the market in 2013, and good for us because within 6 weeks of launching the company, Oprah magazine gave us 2 pages. People magazine gave us a page. I did Ambush Makeover on the Today Show, right? We were kind of striking a nerve, I think, around the combination of innovation, size inclusion, but also really this bigger message around helping people remind themselves of how powerful they really are.
I want to go back to something you just said, though, and I don't want to glance over it because it's really, really important. You know, when I was learning about you and reading about you and very excited for you to come on the show, Lisa, I had read that line from your first professional review. It was always my assumption that that was a man who said that.
It was a woman. It was a woman. Absolutely.
Is there now, again, I get the privilege of age, at 61 to say something like this, looking backwards. I have seen with my own wife's career, my daughter as well, who's 37 and a lawyer and now owns her own law firm, that in many cases, instead of pulling a sister or sisters up, women can be the most brutal to others who are now trying to follow their path or make their way on this planet, maybe even more brutal or damaging than men.
But I think the reason for that is because they weren't in positions of power to help anyway. So if you think about where we're sitting in the feminist movement, we're sitting in the 4th wave. So if you think about the first wave of the 60s and 70s, could women have bank accounts without a man's name attached? Could they be in the workplace, right? Just having a set of rights fundamentally. It wasn't that long ago that a single woman was not allowed to have a bank account without their father or brother or somebody attached to it. The second wave of the 80s and the 90s, it's sort of that Helen Gurley Brown generation where it's not, by the way, Helen Gurley Brown never said we should have it all. She said we should have all the choices. And so I think it was the expansion of women in the workplace. I think the third wave, which is the mentor who gave me this feedback, by the way, she's an angel investor in my company, was really around scarcity. They had fought so hard for that one seat at the table, but the root of power were still in the man's hands. And so I don't think she was doing it to tear me down or not raise me up, but she realized how hard it was for her. I think we're now in the 4th wave, which I call, the third wave I would say is like Me Too, Time's Up, where millennials were using their voice in activism. I think the 4th wave that we're sitting in, which I'm very excited about, is a wave of abundance, right? There isn't just one seat. There are an increasing number of women at the table. And so therefore you can have an abundant mindset rather than a competitive mindset. So yes, I do believe there's a generation of women that have been much harder on women. And I've had a lot of male mentors that have been even higher impact in my story and my journey, but it's because they had the power. I actually don't falter for that. So what I think we're sitting in the midst of right now is the most exciting time for your daughter, especially, is that we finally don't see each other as competition. We don't see each other as threats. There's more than one seat at the table. And so with that abundant mindset, we can have real power of the pack, right? We can link arms so it's harder to push us over. But if you were the first, the few, and the only at the table, you're going to be that much harder on anyone who comes behind you.
It's true. And I see your opinion, and I respect what you just said. I think that's absolutely true. And I think you're right. And I always tell this to my daughter. I said, you're living in the greatest time ever to be a young, super bright, super confident young woman with a law degree and your own law firm. This is this is the greatest time ever.
I mean, your granddaughter
Yeah.
and your great granddaughter
Yeah.
are going to be in a better position. Like my grandfather used to say, it takes 2 generations to progress it because it takes 2 generations to forget. And he was actually referring to the Berlin Wall. So if you had met someone who was growing up during the time of the Berlin Wall, they would remember the Berlin Wall. If you look at grandkids now, they didn't even know a wall existed. They didn't know the difference between East Berlin or West Berlin. And so it really is 2 generations. So I feel like your great granddaughter is at a really good spot, assuming that we do all the work. And I know I can tell, John, you're an ally. So really the work we're doing is not just for ourselves, but I think we're setting the stage for the next 50 years.
It's true. I so agree with you. So it's fascinating. So she focused on, but what I do love is that she gave you that her opinion about gravitas, lacking gravitas, but she also walked you through sort of the spark of how you started your company. She walked you through how she lived her life in terms of putting on the dress every morning, looking her best, looking in the mirror and getting on with it. Now you started the company as sort of a fashion, in many ways, a fashion brand.
So that's what I think a lot of folks, we don't talk about this, but, and I should say feedback is a gift, right? Only your best coaches care enough to tell you. And, the mentor chooses you, you don't choose the mentor, make yourself mentorable. I made myself very mentorable. When people give me feedback, I don't spiral. I absolutely say, you must really care about me. Otherwise you just wouldn't bother to tell me.
Amen.
And
you're right.
And so one of the things I always tell people is the mission statement of the company is we catalyze confidence. It actually is category agnostic. That mission statement can apply to a lot of expressions of the concept. And so we started in fashion because I felt like that was the most physical entree into a woman's life, right? You buy one dress from us and then all of a sudden you get the door open to the messaging. I also think that what I realized is the dressing room was actually more anxiety inducing sometimes than the boardroom. So most women, and I am excited for you to talk about this with the women in your family, they walk into dressing rooms hating themselves, truly self-loathing. It's an analogy for how almost all of us take on the day. And my job and my team's job is we change the chemistry of the room because most people set themselves up to fail. They tell me they're going to lose 10 pounds. They hate their arms. They just had a baby. They're going through, they'll tell me all this negativity in their life. And for the first 10 minutes of any fitting, when I dress a woman, I always ask her, what are you the most proud of in the last year of your life? If your best friend was standing here, what would they tell me about you? What are you the best at in the world? And we start to talk about life in a positive direction. I am a dress whisperer and a velvet knife. So I'm like doing it while she's talking. She's laughing. She's telling me these stories. And inevitably, every woman comes out of a dressing room saying, oh my gosh, this is a skinny mirror. I'm like, nope, it's from Bed Bath & Beyond. It's 1990, rest in peace, Bed Bath & Beyond. But it's 1995. I can't trick you. She said, what did you do? Why was this different? And I said, you set yourself up to fail. And I really think the huge thing that we unlocked is, yes, we sell fashion, but more than anything, confidence is a choice and a mindset before it becomes a behavior. And so we're helping people reframe their mindset before they go do the hard work of their lives. And so, yes, we started in fashion, but what I love to tell people, and I think it's fun to talk about now a decade later with a best-selling book, is it was never about clothing. It was truly about tapping into people's mindsets, and all the stories we tell and the research, the quantitative research we've done for the book really reinforces this idea that society has sold us a bit of a lie that confidence is bravado or swagger. But if you look it up in the dictionary, it's actually an understanding of, appreciation of, and belief in your own talents. It's more about mindset than it is about behavior. I mean, ultimately it becomes a behavior. But what we're really doing, our mission statement is we're catalyzing a mindset and a set of beliefs in your life that, yes, can be expressed through fashion, but might be expressed through the way in which you move through the world differently.
That's really true. And I'm here to also tell you, it's not just women that look in the mirror in the morning and are meltdown, have a little mini meltdown. It's happened to me a million times. And we live in a vain world, and it's
John, you put on a beautiful crisp white shirt, button-down shirt, and a beautiful blazer, and I'm sure that made you feel better about what you had to get done today. And I think it is a flying feather. It is Dumbo's flying feather. It's whatever it is for you. People have told me it's a red lipstick, or it's, my lucky pen, there's all these things. But what we're really doing is we're using those physical objects as triggers for the way in which we want to move through the world.
It's so true. My last company was a .com, started in '98. And we democratized the student lending business, but we did it by professionalizing our sales force. And our sales force were young men and women out of college. And every day because the science proved what you just said, we made the women dress in dresses and the men dress in suits. And they were basically on phones. They never went out and did a sale. And we just said, you look sharp, you be sharp. And the science was there, and it proved out massively for us. And every day people said, can't we? No. Can't we come in and? No. And back then there was no Lululemon, I don't think, in '98, but we just said no sweats, no flip flops, no nothing. You gotta show up sharp and be your best every day. And I really believe in your approach. I think that's right. When you started the company, go back to what you said about size 20. Were you size 20 when you started the company, or you already had shed some of that, shed some weight?
I've been at every size and been happy at every size. And so I think I was a size 12, 14 when we started the company, up and down pandemic. So it doesn't really matter. We always say size is just a number. But one thing that you did say, John, which I loved, is when people ask us what some of our core philosophies are, I always say you don't dress for other people, you dress for yourself. Because people say, oh, do I need to wear more color? I'm like, well, do you like color? Is that something, I wear mostly black all day, and that's because that's the color I feel best in. Right. And so I always say, with the casualization of the workplace, everyone's like Lululemon or sweatpants. I'm like, if you put on your sweatpants and they make you feel invincible and powerful, more power to you. Amen. Right? I'm not going to judge you. But if you put on a dress or a blazer or, something that really makes you feel good about yourself, then if that's your mindset, great. And so, I always say, wear what makes you feel your best, not to impress other people. That doesn't mean we're not a judgmental society, though. Like, there are moments where you do have to dress the part.
That's true. Well, how did you get the nickname, the Dress Whisperer?
Well, I think that is the hundreds and hundreds of hours I've earned being in the dressing room. So I do think, because I have been many sizes, I have been an 8, a 10, a 12, a 22. I've been many sizes. And most people are always surprised when I tell them what size I am, because I've learned how to dress for my body type. I think it allowed me to really understand how to help women highlight their best, regardless of their size or their shape or whatnot. So I do get it right on the first time, mostly because I am that woman in the dressing room. I am that person who has struggled and has figured it out along the way. So much of it is lived experience that is now applied to actually helping customers and serving women.
If you've just joined us, we've got Lisa Sun today with us. She's the founder of GRAVITAS and the author of this best-selling book called GRAVITAS. And it's the 8 strengths that redefine confidence, own your own power, and live with self-insurance. It's a beautiful cover. It's a great book. It's a bestseller. It's at airports, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and everywhere you can buy books, and anywhere you want to buy books. Get this book now. We all have moms. We all have wives or significant others. This is an important book. Lisa, talk a little bit about the evolution as an entrepreneur. So you start the company. You're off to the races. When do you really know you're onto something, and you're glad you made the move from McKinsey, and you don't have any backward-looking regrets?
Well, I don't believe in regrets, only learnings. I will also say, John, men should read the book too. A third of our audience is men who've read the book, because it's important to understand the female mindset. But the thing that really has made all the difference is about 3 or 4 months after we started the company, because of Oprah, because of the Today Show, because of people, we had an early groundswell of success. And we started to get hundreds of emails, handwritten letters. Joanna, a flight attendant who was laid off and with her last paycheck, bought a dress to go to her mom's funeral and to interview for a new job. A woman running to be the youngest woman judge in LA Superior Court. She sent us a video of winning the election in her GRAVITAS dress and her sons putting the judge's robes over her dress. A woman going through divorce in Virginia and bought a dress to go to her son's graduation where she would have to face her ex-husband for the first time. I think you're onto something when people are giving you such windows into their lives and what you've meant to them. So I really am only in this because we're there for women when they most need it. And our tagline of our company is Own Your Moment. And I always say there are these incredibly important moments in our life where self-doubt increases, and we're here to turn those moments of self-doubt into bursts of self-consciousness. And I really wrote the book and we did the quantitative study because I realized not everyone gets to be in the dressing room with me. Not everyone can buy a $300 dress. And I thought for the price of, lunch, you should be able to have a chance to be in the dressing room or in the boardroom with one of us.
That's great. Why do you, in the book, you say self-confidence is a choice? Please explain what that means to you.
Yeah, I love this one. And I love that you have a 4-year-old granddaughter because we are born fully self-confident. Yeah. If I met your granddaughter today and I said, what's her name?
Her name is Coco.
Coco. And I said, Coco, what are you the best at in the world? She would say, I'm the best at hugs. I'm the best at soccer. I'm the best at everything.
Right.
Because at that age, we really believe we're the best at everything, right? We only see our potential. There are no flaws. Everyone around us supports us fully. We're born fully self-confident. That inner child is actually the purest form of confidence you will ever get in your life. And that's why so many people say, oh, when I was younger, I was so much more confident, right? Yeah. What happens is between the ages of 8 and 12, in chapter 2 of my book, we identified 6 forces that appear in adolescence that hold us back. It's actually not your fault. And those 6 forces form the basis of an inner critic that never goes away. And in order to break out of those 6 forces, what we have learned is you first have to make a choice. You have to be able to diagnose which of those forces are affecting you. I always say you can't solve it until you know what the problem is. People are like, I'm afraid or I'm insecure. I'm like, well, then which of these 6 feelings or forces are affecting you? You have to be able to name the problem. And then you have to make a choice to say, okay, these 6 forces, I see them. I'm no longer going to take direction from them. And then you have to build a mindset. And that mindset has to be really based on Coco's view of herself. It has to be a genuine and authentic inventory of your talents and strengths, something that we as adults have been deconditioned to think about. If I asked you what your flaws were, you probably could name them immediately. But if I put you on the spot and said, tell me what you're the best at in the world, rattle it off for me, it's very hard for adults to do. And so we as a society talk about confidence so much, but it's like an iceberg. Only 10% of the iceberg is visible above the waterline. It's the behaviors. Speak up, be assertive, stand, 90% is below the waterline. It's thoughts, values, and feelings we have about ourselves. And so we have to really believe self-confidence is a choice to break out of these 6 forces. And then we have to adopt a mindset of what do I really bring to the table before I turn it into a behavior. And if you flip that equation, guess what? The quietest person in the room might actually be the most confident. And this is why Janet Yellen, when she was nominated to be the head of the Federal Reserve in 2013, hundreds of articles that she didn't have the gravitas to lead the Fed. And Ezra Klein at the Washington Post called out those naysayers. He says, it's because the pervasive view of gravitas does not stretch to include her. She's soft-spoken. She's collaborative. By the way, she's the most qualified for the job. Why do we only label confident people as extroverted and charismatic? Maybe she really likes herself. Maybe she really has talent. Maybe she's super qualified. And so really we're flipping the story. I love Dale Carnegie. He changed my life when I was 12 years old when I read his book. But that is one version of confidence. And what we're really trying to say is there's so many other mindsets and strengths and talents that can lead you to self-belief.
What 12-year-old is reading How to Win Friends and Influence People, though? Like, where did that come from? Was your mom, like, wait a second, talk about mom and dad a little bit. I want to understand this. Were mom and dad always just, for you and your brother, the biggest cheerleaders on the planet? Because as you just said, I totally get what you say. Coco is like, you literally depicted Coco perfectly. But isn't there also part of the parental and even it takes a village type of model that cheerleaders need to be around?
For sure. I mean,
Okay.
I'm very lucky. I still have them as my cheerleaders. Well, I will answer your first question, and then I'll get to your second question. So the first question is, I was a freshman in high school at 12, and my parents realized they could not afford a $28,000 Ivy League education. This was 1992.
Okay.
And my dad started asking around town, like, how am I going to make $28,000 a year to support my kid going to an Ivy League school? And the Rotary Club, the Lions Club, they all had these student speaking competitions where you could win $2,500, $5,000, $15,000, $20,000 at the nationals. And so my dad decided I would start competing in these speaking competitions. And the local Toastmasters chapter in Fontana adopted me. I mean, I was not old enough to be a Toastmaster, but they adopted me and they said, okay, everyone knew my parents' restaurants. So I think they all just wanted like free gift cards to my parents' restaurants. But I would go to the Toastmasters meeting Tuesday mornings at the Sizzler before school. And they trained me how to become a public speaker when I was quite young, so I could win money. I paid for my first 2 years at Yale. And when you join Toastmasters, one of the books they recommend is How to Win Friends and Influence Others.
That's right.
If you think about it, how is the daughter of Taiwanese immigrants going to learn how to operate in Western society? Shake hands, smile, remember people's names, be interested in others. My parents were not equipped to train me. That is not an Asian model of upbringing.
Right.
And so I don't think it was my parents who wanted me to read Dale Carnegie. I'm not sure. My dad read it with me, but I don't even think they knew what the book was. It was the Toastmasters, if you can believe it. And I love the Toastmasters. I am the hugest. Everyone should just go enroll in Toastmasters. It's a nonprofit. It's not expensive. And it's a risk-free way to learn how to advocate for yourself and communicate effectively.
But I mean, imagine what a gift that is at 12 for you to learn those communication skills. That look how much the world has opened up for you. Just, you're an amazing communicator, obviously.
Wow.
And it's been honed in all these years since then. But what a story. Yeah. That's wonderful.
But now I will answer your second question about Coco. Okay. Let's come back to Coco.
Yeah.
So as much support as you can provide someone, when they get between the ages of 8 and 12, so they start going to middle school,
right,
their world expands, and those 6 forces for boys and girls, they just start to appear. There are things like deficit mindset. You start to think about your flaws. Shrinking effect. You underestimate yourself. You shortchange yourself. Setback spiral. Something disappoints you and you think your whole life is off. It's actually those 6 forces. Doesn't matter how great a parent or a grandparent you are, they're going to happen because there's 8 to 10 hours of the day that you're not there and they're amongst other people. And so those forces appear. And I really encourage people who get the book. Chapter 2, a lot of people have told me it has been one of their favorite chapters to read because they're like, you've just explained so much. And the problem is, as men and women climb the ladder, for men, the systems have been built so that those 6 forces actually get alleviated over time because the men built the system, right? So you're not going to shortchange yourself. You're just going to say every promotion, I totally deserved it. Women, because we didn't build the system and the system wasn't built for us, those 6 forces get amplified. And in fact, when you look at women who get promoted, they are more insecure than before the promotion. When they step up or step out, they go, do I deserve this promotion? Did they make a mistake? Rather than when men get promoted, they're like, yes, I totally deserved it. Right. What are we talking about? And so what's fascinating is when men and women and non-binary, everybody reads chapter 2, they go, oh, this makes total sense now. This is what's driving my inner critic, but also this explains how and which society has built systems to help some and not help others.
That's brilliant. I love it.
I mean, it is the Janet Yellen problem, right? That the extrovert wins. I mean, people have told me chapter 2, there's a study we quote from Kelly Shue, who's a professor at the Yale School of Management. She looked at 30,000 employee records. Men were consistently rated the highest on promotion potential, but the lowest on actual results and performance. Women were the reverse. They actually were the highest performers delivering the best results, but they were the least promotable. And when she double clicked on promotion potential, it was extroversion, charisma, and water cooler talk. And she said, we can explain 40% of the pay gap correlated to promotion potential simply because the metrics are subjective. And that is one of the main reasons I wrote this book, is to talk about how all these other ways in which we can value people have been ignored for too long.
So true. So you started the company in 13 or so, 12, 13. You're running the company. It's going well, right? You're growing the company and it's going well. When did you decide, though, when did you decide you had a book in you, that you wanted to write this book?
Well, I would say this is now 6 years ago. One of the ways in which we reach our target customer is we do speaking events along with pop-up shops. And one of the things I realized in doing these speaking events, which were mixed audience, by the way, not just women, men, women, non-binary. And what was interesting about these speaking events is people really said, wow, that is a totally new way to think about confidence. I've never thought about it as a mindset before it becomes a behavior. And then 6 years ago, I said to one of my mentors from McKinsey, hey, should we do a quantitative study on confidence? Like, wouldn't that just be fun just to do quantitative work around this topic? And she's an angel investor in my company. It's a former McKinsey partner. She said, hey, I'm retired and that would be intellectually fun. And we did this quantitative study where we identified 8 types of confidence, not just one, but 8 types of confidence. And she said, this is super fascinating. Like, this is a really interesting way. It's kind of like the Myers-Briggs of confidence, right? And she said, I think we should keep going. So about a year later, I said, well, I think this is a book. I think this turns into something very interesting. And the book allows us to reach a much bigger audience than we can do just through department stores and website. And, most product is commoditized now, right? You can buy anything you want on any channel. And I said, I think our reason to exist may be much bigger. There might be a bigger purpose to calling beyond just selling people clothes. And that's really when we kicked off the journey to writing the book.
And compare your days, your day-to-day life at McKinsey versus at GRAVITAS. At McKinsey, on a macro basis, you were a manager. Now you're a maker. Talk about the difference between managing and making.
Well, I think I always, and so one of our 8 types of confidence is called creating. Yeah. And it is the ability to create something from nothing, envision ideas. I think I always had that because I think a lot of immigrants have creating. So I think I was always creating in some way, regardless of the place I was doing it. The primary difference, and I think our society has celebrated entrepreneurship to the point where they've actually not really communicated how hard it is to be an entrepreneur. And so entrepreneurs, we eat glass, we stare into the abyss. You know this, right? You kind of like,
that's Elon Musk's line.
Yeah, that's his line. It's an Elon. I credit him. I should have credited him. But it's like, where's the next dollar coming from? How am I going to do all this hard stuff that no one else wants to do on my team? So the primary difference is, I'll quote Zadie Smith, time is how you spend your love. And what I realized is how I spend my time, it's something I genuinely love. Even if I'm eating glass and staring to the abyss, I genuinely love serving people. I genuinely love seeing women successful. But 90% of my job really sucks. Like, I don't have a corporate Amex like I did at McKinsey. I don't have a steady paycheck. Every month, that last day of the month, which is tomorrow, I made sure payroll cleared, health insurance, rent. There are some months where we haven't cleared all the bills and I have to call vendors and say, can you give me 2 extra weeks? Can I get on a payment plan? That's the stuff that's really different and hard that I knew from my parents growing up. I saw it. And so you really have to love it to sign up for it. But that's the primary difference. I've also loved getting over status. I will say that's a freeing thing. When you're at McKinsey, it's sort of like you're throwing around your status a little bit. And, that's your reason for being at the table. Whenever I tell people I run a small business, it's got a fashion brand, it's got a content business. I say it unapologetically now, right? I don't have to worry about a big name. We're not a household name yet. And I'm totally fine with that. I don't need to be a unicorn. Right. Unicorns are mythical and very few people accomplish it. I make a difference. I make a difference.
Yeah, you're right, though. You're so right. But that's when, like you said, that when you're calling up the vendors and you're sweating out the everyone's paycheck and paying the payroll tax and everything else that comes with being an immigrant. But it being an immigrant is where then we shine through. Where, because we're not quitting. We don't care how tough it gets. It doesn't, right?
We'll figure out a way.
You're not quitting. You're not quitting ever. You love what you do. You could tell you love what you do. Talk a little bit more about the definition of confidence. You said there's 8 types of confidence. Historically, though, what was confidence in the 60s and 70s? And now what's the modern day definition of confidence in your mind?
Yeah. So, actually, if you look up the word confident in the dictionary, it's an understanding and appreciation and trust in your own abilities. So that hasn't changed.
Okay.
What has changed is how we have used the term. And I think when you think about and I do love Dale Carnegie, so I'm actually not taking away anything from it. It's more that we've really thought of it as extroversion and charisma, right? And I think that historically, at least in Western society, by the way, Asian society is the opposite, right? It's not about bravado or swagger. But I think that the historical ways in which we've looked at it is that, and I think we're just pulling it back to the original definition, which is how do you appreciate your own abilities? So we created 8 types of confidence from the data set. The first 2 are the most classic definitions. Leading, I'm in charge, I set direction, I inspire followership. It is our leaders, right? Leading. The second is what we're doing, performing, extroversion, charisma, being center stage, loving an audience, the exchange of energy between 2 people. Leading and performing, those 2 types of confidence represent less than 20% of America. That means 80% of us have been made to feel bad about ourselves our entire lives. And in fact, if we led and performed all day, nothing would get done. The next 2 are achieving and knowing. Achieving, I get things done. I have an athlete's mindset. Practice makes perfect. If I fail, I get back up again. The second one, knowing. I'm the smartest, most well-researched, most process-oriented person in the room. You want to build IKEA furniture with someone who has knowing as their confidence language. The best example of these 2 types of confidence is the 3 Black women from Hidden Figures. How are 3 Black women able to have the gravitas to be in the room at an all-white male NASA and do the calculations to send a man into space? It's because their superpowers were achieving and knowing. The next 2 are giving and believing. Giving, I'm empathetic, I am thoughtful, I'm collaborative, I care about others. Believing, are you a Ted Lasso fan by any chance, John?
Of course.
Okay. So believing is his superpower. So it's optimism. It's seeing the best in everyone in every situation. He's not a leading coach. He's not a commander coach.
No.
And so he actually says in season 1, I've been underestimated my whole life because I don't look like the other coaches. And I'm not here to win or lose. I'm here to make these people the best possible versions of themselves. So giving and believing are a completely different route to self-belief. And the last 2, creating, we talked about, that's my number 1. A lot of immigrants have it. Entrepreneurs, we believe in things before other people can see them. We create something from nothing. And then the 8th, which actually it's the hardest for women to get. So I'm curious to see if your wife, when she takes the quiz, gets this one. My mom has a lot of it. It's called self-sustaining. I like myself. I don't need to impress you. And in fact, it's the quality most needed to overcome criticism without spiraling and to ask for a favor or a raise, not to ask for a promotion. If you ask for a promotion, it's achieving. Here's why I deserve a title change. Here's why I deserve to manage more people. When you ask for a raise, it's here's my market value. I'm worth it. I'm willing to walk away because someone else will pay me for it. And so together, these 8 qualities, all of a sudden, you shouldn't tell someone to be more confident because that's ambiguous, anxiety inducing. It could be, I need you to be more performing. I need you to be more outspoken and assertive. Or I need you to be more self-sustaining. When people criticize you, you don't have to take it personally. Or, hey, I do need you to be a little bit more achieving, right? Like exceed your targets. And I think we have taken the word confidence as a catch-all when no one really knows how to explain it. And so as we talked about before we got on, you can take a free quiz, myconfidencelanguage.com, to discover which of these 8 you have. My mom has all 8. She's like, I'd take your quiz. I have all 8. 2% of people have all 8. It's not Pokemon. You don't need to catch them all. But it starts to be able to answer the question that Coco could answer, which is, what are you best at in the world? I could tell you now, my confidence language is creating, performing. Obviously, I stood on a stage from the age of 12. leading, and giving. Those are the 4 qualities that define who I am and why I deserve to be here. I am working on self-sustaining. That you can grow your confidence language over time. But self-sustaining is the next one I'm going to get.
You're going to get it. I know you're going to get it. But would you call those 4 of your best qualities? Are those your superpowers?
Those are my superpowers. That's my confidence language. But by the way, my team has the opposite to me. I hire people who are high on achieving and knowing because they get things done.
Right. But that's you're a brilliant leader because that's really intelligent. You can work. You don't want to, come to the office or sit down with your team and be looking at yourself. That doesn't get you anywhere. How many people on your team now? How big is your team?
Well, we have a pretty large team in Asia. So our team in China is 32 because we have factories all over Asia. And then the team in New York is quite small. There's only 6 of us. But, I think the great thing is we are able to pull on lots of other providers. I think that was the brilliance because we've bootstrapped this thing. We haven't raised institutional money. We've just brought on great partners throughout the way. And I'm happy that we are scaling slowly and profitably. And during the pandemic, nobody was buying workwear. So we made hospital gowns and face masks. Because we're a small team, because we're nimble, because we believe in our talents, we focused on how can we help. And so everyone's always shocked. They're like, such a small team and you've pivoted so many times. I'm like, you know what? That's actually because we have so many talents and strengths on this team.
So just so I understand though, if someone wants to come to you to hire you, and after they read your book and they want to come to you for fashion wear, or they come to you and they hire your team and to help them dress for success and dress who they are, how does that work?
Well, they can just email us, hello@gravitasnewyork.com, and book a virtual fitting. And then we do pop up I did during the book tour, I did 51 events across 20 cities in 9 weeks last fall. So we did do a lot of fittings, but we usually pop up at conferences in New York.
Can they come meet your team and get assessed, and then you will create a wardrobe?
Yeah, they can email us and we can set up an appointment for them, but we don't do a lot of them anymore. I at the end, John, I'll pivot around and you can see our factory. We actually work inside a factory on 39th Street. So at the end, I'll take you into the factory. So we still make products made in New York City. So about half of our products are still made here and support local workers. So we've had people come women's wear, men's. We make a lot of products, but a lot of people come to the factory for fittings and we're like, it's not fancy. We got rid of the showroom during the pandemic. We used to have a showroom with fitting rooms. And I was like, you know what? In 2020, 2021, that's not an expense we need to spend right now. So we work inside the factory. That's
brilliant. I think that's brilliant. And you also outfit men as well?
No, we do private label work. So we take other brands' work from a production standpoint.
Got it.
You can only design for people you understand. I'm not sure I quite understand men. So we don't make Gravitas men's products yet.
Talk a little bit about what's the takeaway from today. We want everyone to buy this book, men and women, but what do you want them, when they put down this book after they've read it, what do you want them to say to themselves? What's their takeaway? And then you will say that you've succeeded, Lisa, in what you've done with this wonderful book you've created.
Well, and I think it's on the cover, right? So which is Gravitas for us is not a state of mind or state of being. It's a total approach to living life with self-assurance because things don't get easier. We get stronger. So I think when you read the book, I want you to say, I feel stronger. I feel more capable of handling setback, but also celebrating victories. And so my goal is I feel stronger after reading this book, but also I know where I want to grow. And I understand the people around me better. I want to tell you a fun story from Thanksgiving of last year. I got a long message from someone on LinkedIn who said, you know what? Instead of what we were grateful for, I had my whole family take your quiz. I wanted to know my family's superpowers. Look at that. John's getting ideas. He's like, next family gathering. Let's all hop on our phones. I like where this is going. And she said she has 2 sons, both in college, 2 years apart. And she said, I think I've taken away my younger son's power from him his whole life. And she said, we took the quiz and my oldest, his 3 superpowers were leading, performing, and achieving. He's always in charge. He's the loudest voice in the room. He gets things done. He's got a winner's mindset. He's the athlete. He's the captain of the team. My younger son, he took the quiz, and his superpowers were knowing, believing, and self-sustaining. So he's super smart. He's optimistic. He likes himself. He doesn't feel like he has to be the loudest voice in the room. He said we would go to parties when they were kids, and I would say, my oldest will have you laughing in stitches. He's going to be life of the party. My youngest, don't talk to him. He doesn't deal well with crowds. He's very shy. And she said, what I could have said, he just finished an awesome book about pandas. Ask him anything you want. He loves to talk to people one-on-one. He loves one-on-one. You know, she's like, why did I label one as positive and one as shy? And, you know, that for me was like, wow, I didn't know the book was going to go there. Like, for me, the book was, I know myself better. I know what makes me tick. I feel strong in advocating for myself. I know how to handle situations better and differently from a place of strength. But then the implication was even further for her when she read the book. She said, and now I see other people very differently. And when they're different than me, I can absolutely elevate their differences or help them develop qualities that will make them more successful in the roles they want to be in.
I love that. That's
why men should read the book. Because there's an awesome Amazon review. A man said, I think we've been coaching women incorrectly and with the wrong vocabulary. I read this book and I saw all the women that I work with so differently.
That's wonderful. And I it's going to be in the show notes, but I want to make sure we give it out again. To take the quiz, you go to myconfidencelanguage.com, myconfidencelanguage.com. To find also Lisa, you could go to www.gravitasnewyork.com, gravitasnewyork.com. Both of those links will be in all the show notes and everything else. Lisa, you're so fun to talk to because you have such a broad array of interests, and you can quote from anywhere, and you also have a great knowledge of modern media. So I have to bring up two topics with you.
Okay.
First of all, Barbie. Walk me through Barbie. What's your take on Barbie? I mean, I want to hear it, and then I'm going to share my take. But take me through where do you fall out with all this recent division on Barbie?
Well, I think, like most of us, the summer of Barbie, Taylor Swift, and Beyonce was such a wonderful moment, right? I think there is such economic purchasing power as well as economic power that was generated from the enthusiasm around not just Barbie, but Taylor Swift and Beyonce, right? So if you think about all the things, I think someone called it the funflation economy. And I think it was the CEO of Best Buy. She's a woman. She's like, it's funflation, right?
And Corey Berry's been on this show. And
I
love her. Been on the show, and she's a brilliant leader.
I read you can now tell I read everything because I read about the funflation.
She's a great leader.
And one of the things that I loved about Barbie, and my book came out in September of 2023. So it came on the heels of this incredible summer, right, of all these topics. And the monologue that America Ferrera's character delivers around women and the triple standard, that's actually a huge part of my book, which is we have to be competent, confident, and warm. Take away any one of those and we're labeled. And I think what is important and why I got so excited about it is my book is the playbook on how to overcome that. Because it's amazing that we had this moment where we all felt uplifted, empowered, and saw a lot of the issues firsthand. But then what do we do about it? And so I'm really proud that my book came out at a time where it was like, okay, and this is what you can do about it. It's almost like, I think Lean In Girl Boss started a movement, but no one knew what to do with it. Right. So that's the first thing. I think the recent controversy around the Oscars and all of that, for me, like, I don't think that's why Greta Gerwig and Margot Robbie did the movie. I don't think they did the movie for the accolades. I think they did the movie to create a movement or to be a part of the movement. And so I've kind of said, I'm really upset about it, but at the same time, that's not why you do anything. I don't do anything for awards or accolades.
That's right. No, obviously, and you're so right. Your take is so brilliant on that, and it's so right. And I have to give you a funny side note. The fact that and of course, and I'm saying of course because why wouldn't you know this? I mean, the monologue of America Ferrera to me was just beyond brilliant. So it's 2 weeks ago, and my wife and I are in an elevator, and in she comes. And what I always like to tell someone when they're an artist is, I just love your art. I mean, and so I just said hello, and she's standing it's a crushed elevator, a lot of people on. But I wanted to tell her how much I love the monologue, and I'm so pissed that I didn't, because I just thought that monologue, that's the whole essence of the whole movie was right there. But the funny part was most people don't get. I have a friend, a very, very dear friend, who this week had breast reconstructive surgery.
Oh.
And her husband and I worked together, actually. And I said, oh my gosh, this is so wonderful. It's happening this week. It's earlier than it was supposed to happen in March. And I said, thank Barbie. And he thought I was kidding. And I said, I'm not kidding. I said, breast reconstructive surgery is all because of the brilliant Ruth Handler. Ruth Handler, the founder of Barbie, the first CEO of Mattel, who was put in a whole different light and put under different rules and procedures than other CEOs of corporate America back in the late 60s and early 70s. She had a double mastectomy herself and was the one who started creating the reconstructive movement. And her first client was Betty Ford. And but a maker and a creator and a great immigrant entrepreneur doesn't stop creating because one dream goes away, or if she's already done one dream, doesn't mean you stop making and creating. And it all goes back to me, the great Ruth Handler. I have to also tell you, my wife and I just finished 2 days ago the new show Griselda. And I don't know, have you seen that show yet?
No, I'm going to.
You have to see it. But the two main themes of the show, what wasn't really, I mean, of course, it's the platform is woman becomes a female.
Yeah. Yes, she's the Scarface. She's the female Scarface. Yes. Correct.
But when they interviewed Sofia Vergara about why she made the movie, and she was approached in 2015 by the makers of Narcos on making the movie, it's because the main two themes throughout the movie was she was treated differently. You know, the Griselda was treated much differently and put under other rules and other oppression than the other drug dealers. And she outsmarted them all over and over and over again. And the woman cop trying to catch her in Miami back in the day, back in the late 70s and early 80s, similarly was considered just the coffee maker in the office. But meanwhile, she was the one who broke the case and was the smartest person in the whole office among all these horribly misogynistic and ridiculous men. And they, you know, and basically they made the men, without making them wear it, but in the movie, they basically made them wear the t-shirt, you know, Knuff, basically, because they made them a little bit all a bunch of goofballs. But Griselda is definitely a movie a show that I would definitely recommend for you. You would totally dig it, I think.
Well, I can't wait to dig into it. And what I'll say to you, John, as a challenge is hopefully you're now intrigued to go and read the book. But one of the fun things that's going to, I think, bubble up as you think about the insights at the end of chapter 4, there's a little section of data that explains a lot of the systemic bias women face. It's actually hidden. I'm not like not a hit you over the head feminist. I'm more like a use data to explain why we see the things we see. But at the end of chapter 4, after you've read about your superpowers, there's a little section of data. It's called A New Way to See the World. And it actually talks about, of the 8 superpowers, which of them our society values and which ones they take for granted. And I think it fuels everything you've just shared about Griselda. It fuels that Barbie monologue of like, well, we have just deemed some qualities like giving or no, we've just deemed them as not worthy of notice, or we assume or take for granted that women will have them, right? So we don't get credit for it. And one of the fun things my team did when we were reading the book together before it was published, our 17-year-old intern who made us all go to the Barbie movie. We all dressed up in Barbie costumes in Times Square. My head designer actually sewed real costumes for us. And so we were sitting at lunch before we were going to go to the movie. And she said, Lisa, and she's half Korean, half American. And she said, hey, you know, one of the things I was thinking about is let's look up countries that have ever had a female president. So we went and looked up. And they're countries that value hard work and results over swagger and bravado. And let me give you an example. Scandinavian countries like Finland, Germany, India, it was this really random walk of countries. And we wrote them, it wasn't a long list, but we wrote them down. We're like, I wonder if we launched our quantitative study in those countries, if the data table in chapter 4, we actually show you the percentages of America that fall into each of the 8. Wonder if this would be reversed, like in terms of what people valued. And I thought that was really interesting. And it kind of explains why when we're watching films or TV shows or whatnot, that really show the way in which the systems have pushed back on female leadership. It's what we all know, right? Women, we get the job done. We don't ask or talk about it, right? We're not the people on the front of stage giving the speech. It's when tsunamis happen, men make speeches, women, we clean up the beaches. And so it's fascinating. And I'm happy that we as a society are exploring all of this through different formats.
I think it's brilliant. I think your book is so important. No more important than right now, actually. The time has come for more women leaders in every walk of society, both business and government. We need women leaders in every form. I mean, at my company here, I couldn't do this company without my wife of 40 years. She's my partner here with 2 other partners, and she's the number 2 in control of the company. And then you have, our director, our chief of staff is a woman, our director of finance is a woman, our director of we have 7 or 8 women directors here. It's so important to make sure that Corey Berry came on the show and she talked about diversity, and it's diversity of voices, and we need women voices everywhere we go now more than ever. I was at a conference. This was so prescient. He is so brilliant though. Ted Turner. This was 15 years ago. I'm at a conference, and he got up in front of the whole crowd and basically said that the world would be a much better place if there was more women leaders of countries. To your point, I remember that.
Okay, John. Last challenge for you. I think every woman on your team or man, anybody on your team should take this quiz. I think it'd be a fun lunchtime conversation around what superpowers did you get? Okay. And your daughter and your 4-year-old's too young. She's gonna have all 8. But I think your daughter and your wife, I think it'll be fun for you to see your results against all the people on your team and in your family.
We're gonna do that. And off the air, I'm going to ask you to sign some books for me, because I'm going to give out signed books. I'm going to buy the books from you, and I'm going to have you sign them for me, because I want to give them out signed by you, because that will be really special. Can you show me your factory before I let you go?
Oh, yes. Okay, let's go. So 39th Street between 7th and... You get to see all the lighting that was propping me up. So here we go. This is our little conference room where I do this. Here we go. If you've ever wanted to see old school garment production, here we go.
This is a real schmata family, and this is a real schmata factory in New York City. This is wonderful.
Yeah, it goes all the way back.
That's huge.
Feet. So this is where we work. That's our production manager's desk, and so we have floor upstairs. Yeah. So this is what we do. We make things. Look, this is our designer's desk.
This is great, Lisa. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, we really make clothes. I think everyone's always shocked when they see it. They're like, wait, when you say you work inside a factory, do you really work inside a factory? I'm like, yeah, I really work inside a factory every day.
Where does the GRAVITAS brand sell?
So we're online right now. We're no longer in department stores. Post pandemic, we're no longer in department stores.
So they can find the clothes at gravitasnewyork.com.
Yeah.
Great. So the clothes for our audience, the clothes are at gravitasnewyork.com. Those will be in the show notes. And to take the quiz that we've talked about, that's in this wonderful book, Gravitas, that you can buy at Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, and fine bookstores all wherever you are, including at airports across the world. You could go to www.myconfidencelanguage.com. Lisa Sun, thank you so much for spending this much time with us today. Thank you for all the great and important work you're doing. And more importantly, thank you for what you're doing for women and the confidence movement and the insurance movement and making the world a much better and equitable place.
Thank you, John. This is so much fun.
This edition of the Impact Podcast is brought to you by Engage. Engage is a digital booking platform revolutionizing the talent booking industry. With thousands of athletes, celebrities, entrepreneurs, and business leaders, Engage is the go-to spot for booking talent, for speeches, custom experiences, live streams, and much more. For more information on Engage or to book talent today, visit letsengage.com. This edition of the Impact Podcast is brought to you by ERI. ERI has a mission to protect people, the planet, and your privacy. and is the largest fully integrated IT and electronics asset disposition provider and cybersecurity-focused hardware destruction company in the United States and maybe even the world. For more information on how ERI can help your business properly dispose of outdated electronic hardware devices, please visit eridirect.com.